Everyone anticipated a typical hearing, until Jasmine Crockett quietly presented documents that left Greene visibly uneasy, defensive, and exposed before a national audience. There was something subtly different that morning on Capitol Hill. Attention hung in the air, not loud or obvious, but noticeable in the staffers' eyes. The small movements of chairs, and the deliberate way Reverend Jasmine Crockett aligned her documents while waiting to speak. C-SPAN was live, phones were recording, and reporters in the back were already making notes, mostly expecting the usual back and forth. But Jasmine was there for something more deliberate. She adjusted her glasses, took a steady breath, and leaned into the microphone. The room quieted. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," she began, voice steady and firm. "I want to raise what I see as a serious breach of public trust by a member of this chamber." The atmosphere shifted. Heads turned. Cameras zoomed in. Still, Jasmine stayed composed. "I'm referring to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and a series of questionable financial actions that I believe deserve public scrutiny," she continued. She began with campaign funds reportedly diverted to personal interests through 2 Georgia-based shell companies. A soft murmur moved through the room. Marjorie leaned forward, eyes fixed on Jasmine, her hands initially still, now visibly tensing. "You've got nothing but speculation," Greene said across the table. Jasmine remained calm. "I have documentation, not speculation," she said, lifting a slim folder. "And I'd appreciate the opportunity to speak without interruption." The chair struck the gavel. "Order. Let the representative continue." Jasmine continued, flipping to the first page. "Based on FEC data, nearly $130,000 in campaign money was sent to a consulting firm named Oak Star Strategies," she said, "a company with no physical address." She paused, letting the statement land. Greene shifted again. "That's a valid company and you know it," she interjected. "No, I don't," Jasmine answered, glancing in Greene's direction. "After 3 calls, 2 disconnected lines, and a Freedom of Information request, I still couldn't connect a real person to it." That was the turning point. Staffers exchanged glances. One of them, appearing to be in his mid-20s and visibly anxious, started typing quickly on a tablet. Behind the dais, a camera operator leaned toward a colleague, whispering. Moments later, tweets started circulating. Jasmine sensed it, but she stayed focused. "Additionally," she continued, flipping to the next page, "there's a reimbursement claim for a trip to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 3 nights in luxury accommodations, private flights, labeled as strategic planning." Greene leaned in, raising her voice. "You're misrepresenting facts. That trip was approved. There's nothing—" "I have flight records, Marjorie," Jasmine interrupted calmly. "Would you like me to read them aloud?" The tension in the room had grown. Committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Someone cleared their throat. Even the chair now watched Jasmine closely, lips tight, unsure where this was headed. Jasmine glanced down at the folder again, but held off on reading it. Instead, she said quietly, "If taxpayers are covering luxury travel linked to private interests, they deserve transparency. And if there's any dishonesty about how that money is used, we have a responsibility to address it." Greene snapped. "You're turning this into political theater. It's a smear campaign. Then the truth shouldn't concern you," Jasmine replied, steady and composed. The atmosphere shifted. This no longer felt like routine posturing. Something more serious had begun. The microphone was still hot, but the next page Jasmine turned to would escalate everything. The room was already charged, but as she flipped the page, the mood shifted again, tighter, heavier. She waited a moment. The silence spoke for itself. Then she looked up and said, "This goes beyond trips and donations. It's about honesty. It's about what's said in private when there's no one around to hear." She paused. "I have transcripts." The word landed with weight. Greene's jaw clenched. "Transcripts of what?" she demanded, leaning forward. "Phone conversations," Jasmine answered plainly. "One from March 9th of last year, another from July. Both linked to discussions about redirecting PAC funds for personal property purchases, including one in Flagler Beach, Florida." A sharp intake of breath came from somewhere in the gallery. You're lying, Greene snapped, raising her voice. This is all fabricated. Jasmine didn't react right away. She pulled out a printed page, slid it across the table to the committee clerk, then turned toward the chairman. For the record, I'm submitting this to be included in the official hearing documents. These transcripts were verified by 2 independent sources before I even considered reading them publicly. Greene now looked visibly shaken. Her eyes darted across the room, but no one came to her defense. From the back, a reporter quietly mouthed, "Oh my God," to her colleague while reaching for her phone. Jasmine continued, "In the March 9th, Call Greene's aide discusses rerouting $20,000 from the Freedom Rising PAC to a private account. That account is registered under a Florida-based LLC, reportedly owned by her brother-in-law." She paused. When asked why, the aide says, quote, "We need it for the beach property. Contractors are waiting." Silence followed. Even the chairman didn't reach for the gavel. Greene stood abruptly. "This is defamation. I don't even have a brother-in-law." Jasmine raised another sheet of paper. "His name is Ronald Edgerton. He's married to your husband's sister, Kendra. Records indicate the LLC, Bay Rise Investments, was formed 2 months before the wire was sent." She held the document higher. "I have the Florida business registration here." The reaction in the room was immediate. It wasn't just murmurs. Now, the entire energy had shifted. One of Greene's staffers quietly left the chamber. Another began frantically typing into her phone. Greene remained standing, clearly unsettled, pointing at Jasmine. "You're lying," she said. Shameless, attention-seeking liar." Jasmine lifted her eyebrows slightly, but her voice remained even. "Then, why did the bank flag that wire transfer?" Jasmine asked. "Why is there a note about a fraud inquiry being opened, then quietly closed just 2 weeks later with no official explanation?" She leaned back slightly, maintaining eye contact with Greene. "Because you assumed no one would notice, but I did." Cameras kept rolling. The chairman finally spoke. "We'll take a 5-minute recess." "No, we won't," Jasmine replied firmly. "I'm not finished." With that, she regained full control of the room. "In July," she continued, "there was another phone call, this one involving a developer based in San Diego. Same PAC, same shell company. This time, it was a $50,000 consulting fee marked under security advisement." She paused. "But the man on that call confirmed he never met you, never spoke with you, and never signed any agreement." The chairman looked like he might interrupt, but said nothing. Jasmine turned to him. "Sir, these aren't claims. These are verified financial transactions. We all sit here claiming to serve the public, but if we're not willing to hold each other accountable, what exactly are we doing?" She stood, taking a moment to scan the room, allowing the question to linger. Greene remained silent, her face red, her hands now still resting on the table. Outside the chamber, the media was already drafting headlines, but Jasmine wasn't just bringing potential misconduct to light. She was laying the groundwork for something far larger. The room felt changed, tighter, as if the atmosphere itself had grown heavier. Greene sat back in her seat, arms crossed, lips tightly pressed together. It was clear she wasn't used to being challenged like this, especially not in front of a live national audience, not under this kind of pressure. Jasmine picked up a smaller folder this time. The label read, "Private Travel Disbursements 2021-2023. "Let's go over these trips," she said, looking directly at Greene. "The ones labeled as strategic meetings, but linked to private donors, real estate agents, and oddly enough, cryptocurrency investors based in Scottsdale, Arizona." There it was, an unexpected direction. Not just about PAC money anymore, not just campaign-related issues. Something more complex, more obscure. Greene let out a small laugh and shook her head. "Crypto? Really? That's what you're going with now?" "I am," Jasmine responded. "Because I don't believe the American people expect their representatives to stay at luxury resorts like the Phoenician, funded by individuals with no official lobbying registration." While calling it research, she flipped the page. "April 2022. You flew to Scottsdale on a private jet, registration number N549TW. That aircraft is registered to a company named Orbit Holdings. Its owner, Leonard March is currently under IRS investigation for international wire fraud. The name carried weight. Whispering broke out again in the gallery. Phones came out, notes were taken. You spent 3 nights in a luxury suite. I have the invoice right here, Jasmine said, lightly tapping the document. Paid in full by Orbit. Never listed on your financial disclosures. Not once. Greene's face tensed. That wasn't mine to report, she argued. He offered me the stay. I didn't cover the cost. Exactly, Jasmine said. Which is the issue? Accepting undisclosed benefits from individuals under federal investigation while serving on the Oversight Committee isn't just questionable, it's unethical, potentially criminal. The chair glanced up from his documents. He didn't intervene. No one did. Jasmine turned to the next page. May 2023, Sedona. Another private flight, this time arranged by a donor group, connected to Westbridge Energy, an oil lobbying organization based in Dallas. 2 of those donors had open cases before the Environmental Affairs Subcommittee. That statement hit harder. Stop, Greene said, her voice unsteady. You're spinning this. You know how things work. Members get invites, we attend events. It's part of the job. Jasmine lifted her hand gently. It's not about attending, it's about the pattern. The same individuals, same private flights, same hotels, and none of it reported. She stepped slightly away from the mic, walking across the front of the dais. Her voice took on a quieter tone, not softer in intent, but more direct. Let me ask you something, Congresswoman, Jasmine said, pausing. Why did you meet with Nicholas Avrell, CEO of Westbridge, just 3 weeks after voting against the Clean Water Accountability Act? That vote, she continued, blocked an amendment that would have tightened regulations on runoff exemptions for oil companies, including his. Greene blinked. I never met with him, she replied. You were photographed with him. Jasmine answered calmly. On the terrace at El Encanto. It was posted, then taken down. The clerk slid a printed screenshot across the table. There it was. Greene, smiling in sunglasses next to a man holding a whiskey glass wearing a badge that read, Nicholas A. That photo passed down the line. Everyone saw it. You didn't realize the camera was there, Jasmine added. But the internet doesn't miss these things. Greene opened her mouth, then closed it, twice. She reached for her water, holding it but not drinking. Jasmine allowed the silence to settle. This isn't about political sides, she said finally. It's about integrity. You've built your reputation on opposing elites, corruption, and insider politics. But what happens when that image no longer holds? No one replied. Greene said nothing. But silence didn't stop the sound outside. Word was already moving faster than anyone inside that room could contain. Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't known for retreating. Her reputation was built on confrontation, being louder, bolder, and more unyielding than anyone else present. But now, as she sat at that table surrounded by files, cameras, and a stunned panel, her usual intensity seemed diminished. The unraveling began subtly. Her fingers started tapping quickly on the desk, her eyes scanning the room, looking for someone to step in. But this time, no one did. Then she burst out. "This is a damn ambush," she yelled, pushing up from her chair so fast it scraped the floor. "This entire hearing is just a hit job. Where's the due process?" The chairman tried to respond. "Congresswoman Greene, please." "No," she cut in, her voice sharp. "I won't just sit here while some blazer-wearing activist recites lies written by who knows who," she said, jabbing a shaky finger toward Jasmine Crockett. The room went completely still again. Jasmine, still standing at the podium, slowly lifted her gaze. "I've provided names, files, photos, and dates. Nothing I said is based on guesses. You just don't like seeing the reflection," she said. "You're out of line," Greene snapped. "No," Jasmine answered. "I'm finally in line, and I'm not stepping aside." Her voice was steady, deliberate. It didn't sound dramatic, it sounded real. That made it more powerful, it felt authentic. The kind of tone that cuts through screens across the country. One of Greene's staffers tried passing her a note, but she brushed it aside. "Why don't you talk about your donors?" Greene shouted. "All that hidden money behind your campaign, Jasmine. You think you're above this? You think you're some kind of saint? I'm not here for a show," Jasmine replied calmly. I'm here to ask questions. Questions the public deserves answers to. And each time you yell or dodge, you prove those questions are necessary. The chairman made another attempt. Let's bring the hearing back to order, but Greene wasn't finished. You want drama? Fine, she snapped. I've got nothing to hide. Nothing. Unlike the rest of you, smiling for the cameras, lying, when no one's watching. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. Then explained the third account, set up in your name under Atlantic East Solutions LLC, linked to a short-term rental property in Tampa. It received several PAC deposits right after. Your vote opposing rental regulation reform. That statement landed hard. Greene didn't respond, not even a word. That was the change. Before, she had shouted and argued. Now, for the first time, she looked uncertain, drained, exposed, and the cameras captured all of it. Outside the chamber, the story was already exploding. News channels broke into their schedules. The live footage had gone viral before Jasmine even returned to her seat. People weren't just watching. They were analyzing. Some applauded. Others were alarmed. A few confused. But no one looked away. Inside the room, Greene's outburst had done more than reveal a weakness. It changed the direction. What started as a tense back and forth was now shifting towards something more like a formal inquiry. You could feel it in how the other members sat up straighter. They were no longer passive observers. They were starting to seem genuinely alarmed. Jasmine didn't say another word during that section. She didn't need to. She simply closed the folder in front of her and reached calmly for a glass of water. Meanwhile, Greene sat in silence, her rage now fading into something else, something that looked more like anxiety. But anxiety can fuel rash behavior, and Greene wasn't someone who stepped aside easily. The hearing was adjourned 15 minutes early. The gavel fell quickly, and committee members left with tense expressions and scattered notes. What had erupted inside that chamber wasn't staying there. It was spreading into the halls, the elevators, the phone calls throughout the Capitol. Jasmine Crockett didn't hurry. She stood composed, organizing her folders, ignoring the background chatter, the glances, and the 3 separate aides asking if she'd make a hallway statement. Her response to all of them was identical. Not, yet just outside in the hallway, Marjorie Taylor Greene paced back and forth. No cameras, only voices, and she was raising hers. You don't let a junior member come in here and try to tarnish my name, she said sharply to her aide, a tall man in his 30s with focused eyes and a phone clutched tightly in his hand. This whole thing was planned. Someone's backing her. I want to know who. He gave a quick nod. We're working on it. We've got a draft ready, the usual. Political targeting, deep state narrative. Should we send it out? Now or hold? He asked. For now, she said quickly. And tell Tucker I'm doing his show tonight, 10 minutes, no soft questions. Down the hall, Jasmine walked past a small group of staffers. Their quiet conversation stopped the moment she appeared. She didn't return anyone's look, except one. A young black intern, likely 19 or 20, who gave her a glance that wasn't just respectful. It was thankful. Jasmine gave a slight smile and continued walking. 2 floors up in a more private corridor, Representative Alan Dorsey, a centrist from Oregon, was already on a call with his chief of staff. We need to step back, he said decisively. I don't care what she meant for the base. This is going to explode. Do you think the documents are real? The voice on the line asked. She read through them too cleanly, Dorsey replied. That wasn't drama. That was planning. Outside, media had started gathering along Independence Avenue, cameras mounted, microphones clipped to jackets. A CNN reporter practiced his segment while producers counted down from 10. Everyone wanted in on the unfolding story. Inside a nearby conference room, Greene sat with her communications head and one of her legal advisors. Her tone had shifted. Less aggression, more thought. What's the worst-case scenario, she asked, staring at the table. The lawyer, an older man with a graying beard, cleared his throat. If Crockett's documents hold up and she moves to file a formal ethics complaint, we could be looking at censure, possibly more. Just the financial issues could lead to FEC scrutiny, IRS flags, maybe even DOJ involvement if they start digging. Greene didn't answer. She just stared ahead. What about our support base? Her comms lead asked. "We'll hold the base," Greene responded. "They don't care about super PACs or flight details. They care that I push back." The lawyer gave her a glance. "They care until it starts looking like you weren't honest." Elsewhere, in a modest office tucked behind the hearing room, Jasmine sat quietly with her chief of staff, sipping from a cup of cold coffee. "They're going to spin this like it was a hit job," the aide said. "They'll call you a puppet. A setup, all of it." Jasmine gave a faint smile, though there was weight behind it. "They can say whatever they want," she replied. "But when I meet people's eyes back home, I'll be able to say one thing for sure." "What's that?" "That I told the truth and backed it up with evidence." But while Jasmine relied on truth as her defense, Greene was already working on her next step, and it wasn't going to follow the same rules. By the time the hearing resumed the following day, the environment had completely shifted. This wasn't just a congressional meeting anymore. It had turned into a full-blown media event. Satellite vans filled the streets, and cable networks switched to bright red banners. Headlines flashed. Capitol tensions rise. Greene under pressure, Crockett reveals new evidence. Questions flew. Was it all fabricated? Inside, the committee room reached capacity an hour early. Journalists packed in, typing rapidly. Even members who often came late were early today. Expressionless, phones in hand, Jasmine Crockett entered without fanfare. She carried a single manila folder and had a composure that unsettled observers. Marjorie Taylor Greene hadn't made any public statements since the previous day's incident, but today she appeared with a more polished look. Sharper attire, well-done makeup, and a carefully practiced expression. It was firm, detached. Jasmine didn't delay. As soon as she was granted time by the chair, she stood and addressed the room. "Yesterday, I shared documented evidence involving campaign finance issues and undisclosed benefits. There's one more document I held back until I could confirm its validity. Now that I have, I believe both the committee and the public have a right to review it." She placed the manila folder on the desk and slowly opened it. "This is a preliminary agreement between Representative Greene and Ridge Hill Partners, a Nevada-based investment group. The document is dated February 2023, 2 weeks before Representative Greene introduced legislation aimed at reducing capital gains taxes on private energy assets. There were audible reactions, even from committee members. Jasmine held up the first page. The header was bold, listing both Greene's name and Ridge Hill's branding. "This agreement contains language showing Representative Greene committed to supporting deregulation policies in exchange for an unreported equity share in a related entity, Horizon Aggregate Ventures, a company with significant interests in fracking operations throughout the Midwest." Greene stood up abruptly. "That's fabricated. That's not my signature," she said loudly. Jasmine remained composed. "We had it reviewed by a neutral forensic handwriting expert. The signature matches 5 other filings submitted to the Georgia Secretary of State." Greene's face lost color. A reporter near the back quietly muttered, "That's the turning point." But Jasmine continued. "The proposal was never disclosed to the public. The bill tied to it didn't pass. But the nature of the agreement is still clear. An offer to influence legislation in return for personal financial benefit." The room fell silent. Not a respectful pause, but a stillness born of uncertainty. No one knew how to respond. One of Greene's lawyers leaned in and whispered something. She pulled away, visibly unsettled. "You have no idea what you're doing," Greene said softly, voice wavering. "You're tearing the whole thing down. For what? A media moment?" Jasmine's reply was steady. "No, for transparency." The chairman leaned forward. "Representative Crockett, are you formally asking that this document be submitted to the House Ethics Committee?" Jasmine nodded. "Yes, along with the full binder of related records. They've been uploaded to a secure congressional server and are available to all committee members." The clerk stepped over and took the folder. Outside, a camera shutter clicked. Viewers following the hearing live began responding instantly. Thousands of comments poured in. Even conservative analysts on television found it difficult to defend Greene without sounding absurd. Back inside, Greene slowly returned to her seat. Her hands stayed still, her face blank. Something had changed inside her. It wasn't just anger or irritation anymore. She now understood this wasn't just a political issue. It was a legal threat, a serious risk to her career. And the most troubling part, she had no idea what else Jasmine might still have. But Jasmine had delivered her message. Now the real test was whether the system would respond or remain passive. By mid-afternoon, the coverage was inescapable. Every news outlet, MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, even local channels in cities like Tulsa, Boise, and Fresno were reporting it. People weren't just watching highlights from the hearing. They were talking in diners, whispering in churches, and debating during lunch at work. Social media lit up. Hashtags like Crockett exposes Greene, Packgate, and Greene collapse trended within minutes. On YouTube, a clip of the hearing hit 2 million views in 4 hours. A short clip showing Greene slamming her hands on the desk, captioned, "When receipts hit harder than opinions," went viral. In Shreveport, Louisiana, a barbershop had the TV on. Curtis, the owner, paused a haircut just to say, "She cooked her on live TV." That wasn't politics. That was precision. In Cedar Rapids, Iowa, 2 retired teachers, lifelong conservatives, sat at a diner watching the broadcast on a small screen above the counter. "She looked guilty," one said plainly. "She didn't even try to deny that last document." "She raised her voice, sure," the other replied. "Didn't work this time." It was one of those moments that bypasses media filters and connects directly with people. There was a sense of authenticity. Political affiliation didn't matter. Greene's situation had become more than just a news story. And Jasmine, she became a nationally recognized name overnight. Clips showing her calm demeanor spread rapidly. A tweet read, "If Grace under pressure had a face, it'd be Jasmine Crockett." On TikTok, a remix turned her quote, "I told the truth," and "I told it with receipts," into a beat-heavy chorus. Teenagers who'd never heard of a House hearing were quoting her online. Cable outlets couldn't keep pace. Some news anchors tried to paint it as partisan conflict, but audiences weren't convinced. The evidence was too detailed, the documents too direct, and Greene's silence too noticeable. Even among Greene's most faithful supporters, doubts were emerging. At a town hall in Grand Junction, Colorado, a woman in a green 2022 hoodie stood up. She asked her congressman, "Why aren't you addressing the PAC money? If it's fake, she'd say so loud." She hasn't said anything. Talk radio lit up. Some callers stood by Greene, others didn't. "She fought for us," said one caller from Wichita. But now it seems like she fought for herself. Online, conservative influencers hesitated. A few tried to undermine Jasmine by sharing old videos and tweets. But none of it gained traction. She hadn't raised her voice. She didn't make personal attacks. She presented her case clearly and stood firm. Attempts to discredit her failed. Meanwhile, congressional offices were overwhelmed with calls. Some demanded Greene step down. Others called for a full investigation. Some simply asked for answers. The Speaker's office gave no official statement, but sources revealed that private discussions had already taken place. Whispers of possible censure, or more, were already circulating. And through all of it, Jasmine remained silent. No media tour, no dramatic interviews, just a brief message on her congressional website, thanking her supporters and reaffirming her promise to remain transparent. That quiet response said more than any press conference could. While Greene's team scrambled to contain the damage, Jasmine didn't need to say anything further. The public had already begun shaping the narrative, and as the response grew louder, so did the pressure on those in power to finally take action. By the third day, Greene's office felt more like a bunker than a workplace. Blinds were drawn, phones rang without pause, staff spoke in low voices. Her chief of staff, exhausted and red-eyed, stood by the copier, pressing buttons aggressively. "Is she coming in?" one aide asked quietly. "She's still in the conference room," another replied, "on another call with legal." Inside that room, Marjorie Taylor Greene was hunched over a speakerphone, surrounded by papers, half-finished coffee, and 3 colleagues who looked just as worn out. "She's not backing off," her lawyer said. "She's staying firm, and she's doing it strategically. No leaks, no sound bites, just documents. That's risky." "So what now?" Greene asked, massaging her forehead. You don't resign, the attorney replied. But don't go on camera again. Every time you talk, it makes things worse. We need a carefully worded statement. Greene shook her head. Careful isn't my style. It is now, the lawyer replied bluntly. In the Capitol cafeteria, two aides from different offices exchanged looks over lunch. She used to be loud, one said. Now she's silent, that's how you know it's serious. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett's office was flooded with inquiries, from reporters, elected officials, even former members of Congress. Some offered congratulations. Others voiced quiet support. A few kept things vague, waiting to see how it all played out. But Jasmine didn't celebrate. She didn't claim a win. That Friday, she returned to her district office and sat in on a housing complaint meeting with senior citizens in Dallas. Aren't you exhausted? An aide asked quietly afterward. I'm always tired, Jasmine said with a soft smile, but I'm not finished. Back in Washington, events unfolded quickly. A bipartisan group on the House committee started reviewing the records Jasmine had submitted. It wasn't a formal probe yet, but it was the first move, a process that usually takes months, but, in this case, only took days. Gradually, Greene supporters began distancing themselves. Some made generic statements about respecting the process. Others avoided the press altogether. Only fringe voices stayed loud, spreading conspiracy theories online, calling Jasmine a plant, claiming the documents were fake, despite no evidence to support that. By the next week, 3 Republican members quietly requested an internal ethics review. It was a major signal. Greene's own party wasn't ready to shield her unconditionally anymore. 2 days later, Greene issued a written statement. No apology, no admission. Just a claim that Jasmine Crockett was misusing the system to attack true patriots. But by then, the story had changed. Editorials from across the country focused on transparency, the need for accountability, and the role of personal integrity. In Greene's own district, a local poll showed her approval rating had dropped by 20 points in just 1 week. 20 points. At a Rotary Club in Macon, Georgia, a former donor stood and addressed the crowd. I don't care which party you belong to. If you lie to the public and get caught, you don't deserve to represent them. The consequences weren't only political, they became personal. Some staff members began considering other jobs. Donors stopped responding. Lobbyists began to avoid meetings. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett stayed focused. She continued working, kept replying to emails. She hadn't defeated her opponent with insults or tactics. She did it using documents, composure, and facts. And the country took notice. But the real test wasn't what happened to Greene. It was what Congress and the voters would do afterward. By month's end, the media frenzy began to fade, but the questions didn't stop. In fact, they became more focused, more direct. Voters nationwide had witnessed something uncommon. Evidence, presented with discipline, without theatrics and without retractions. For once, a political moment felt genuine. In interviews, people across the country kept saying the same thing. She didn't yell, she didn't attack, she simply laid out the facts. At a community center in Akron, Ohio, a pastor told his congregation during a Sunday sermon, "Integrity is quiet. Loud doesn't always mean right, and truth doesn't need to raise its voice." Jasmine Crockett wasn't trying to become a media star. She didn't hire a new PR team. She didn't appear on every show that invited her. Instead, she chose to sit down for an interview with a local reporter in Dallas. The conversation was measured and direct. "Was this meant to be a takedown?" the reporter asked. "No," Jasmine answered clearly. "I wanted people to see what happens when you follow the facts. I wanted them to know that real strength comes from preparation, not from noise." The reporter followed up. "Are you worried about backlash?" "I know it's possible," she said, "but I'm not concerned. I didn't do this to win a fight. I did it because people deserve more than distractions and illusions." That line stuck in Washington. The House Ethics Committee quietly launched a formal review of Greene's campaign finances. No announcement, just a short notice saying her records were under examination. For Greene, the situation didn't fade. It just went behind closed doors. She brought in legal advisors, staff began leaving, travel was reduced. A once regular guest on evening news shows, she now turned down interviews. No more camera-ready remarks, just silence and careful planning. As for Jasmine, recognition continued. She was invited to speak at major universities, Georgetown, Howard, UC Berkeley. Not as a celebrity, but as a calm, thoughtful leader. She repeated the same message each time. Don't mistake volume for truth. Be prepared, and never be afraid of the facts. High school students wrote her letters. Young women said they were inspired, seeing someone like them stand with a binder and confront falsehoods. Voters felt represented, like someone had finally said what they had been thinking. Politics doesn't have to be a show. And maybe, just maybe, the truth still counts. One evening, Jasmine was invited to a town hall in Garland, Texas. The room was full, standing room only. No campaign banners, no catchphrases. Just a diverse group of residents, black, white, Latino, young and old, waiting to hear from the woman who had faced one of Congress's loudest members without backing down. She stepped to the microphone and looked across the crowd. I'm not here to talk about scandals or headlines, she began. I'm here to talk about what comes next, because that hearing wasn't about one person. It was about what we allow in our politics, and whether we still care enough to ask, is this honest? Is this right? Is this who we want to be? She paused, then added, power without truth is just noise, and we've had enough noise. The audience responded, not with anger, but with applause. A calm, steady applause from people who felt like someone was finally saying what mattered. Later that night, back home, Jasmine sat quietly at her kitchen table. The binder from the hearing was still in her bag. She hadn't looked at it since. She didn't need to. She knew what was inside, and more importantly, so did the public, because truth, when spoken clearly and without fear, doesn't just win debates. It changes how people think. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who still values truth, facts, and accountability. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that matter.